This is Scorched Vine, a Vin Noir's production. Hope's Nocturne, written by OPL Noir, performed by Carrie Storm. Part 2 of the prologue, Silenced. Until recently, the Academy had been considered an elite, male-only institution, one attended by scholarship, paying thousands per term, or by invitation. Their mother had pulled every string she had so that Anna could attend. When she ran out of strings, she borrowed. However, leveraging their portable assets, her jewelry, so that Amanda could attend, had incurred their father's wrath, the reasons for which Amanda had only recently asked him when she'd mustered the courage. Imagine it is the middle of the night, and everything that is precious to you is stuffed in a sack or sheet. You are running for your life. Her father paused, closing his eyes as if reliving the experience. His voice, already raspy from decades of indulging his passion for cigars, became deeper, heavier with emotion. A horde of monsters are hot on your heels, and they've promised to end life as you know it. A lifetime of unspeakable nightmares awaits if they catch you, if you can't move fast enough. And everything you're going to need to survive, to start over, is stuffed into that sack. He opened his eyes, his deep green depths riveted on hers. What would you pack? Caught off guard, Amanda stammered. She had heard this story many times before, and only wanted to know why he'd objected to the new school. Specifically, why he was so vehemently against her mother's use of the portable assets for her education. What this story had to do with her future escaped her. So she stared, first at his cluttered desk, then his cigar's thin column of smoke twirling up to the ceiling, searching for an answer, and drew a blank. Because your grandmother, to the power of 10, had to make that choice. Her ability to make the right snap decision made the difference for generations. So, he frowned at her, then shrugging his broad shoulders asked, "What would you pack?" Swallowing down hurt feelings and the indignation that had festered over the past weeks, during which time she'd concluded that neither of her parents thought her capable of attending the same school as her sister. Putting all of that aside, Amanda sighed and gave his question some serious thought. She'd been packing her school supplies when she'd received the summons via handwritten note delivered by Anna. "They're one good child," she grumbled as she stumped down the stairs. "Maybe this is when he will admit that I am not his. It's possible that he's reached his limit, and the idea of handing over large sums of cash for a child that's likely not his was a straw too many," she'd speculated while scowling at the formal, elegant script. "Your presence is required below stairs, in the office of the Prescott family Master-at-Arms. You are to attend Admiral Prescott in his office post-haste," the missive had read. In the silence of any explanation, Amanda had filled the yawning void with what she thought were plausible reasons for his objections. Those excuses ranged from her weak, in comparison to Anna's, grades, to, in really dark moments, her father coming to the conclusion that she wasn't his. Over the years, sidelong glances from extended family members or cryptic jokes made in passing by so-called friends had never hit their mark. This was due in part to her inability to understand their bobs, a condition she rectified by scouring her encyclopedia. When that proved unfruitful for their more colorful words, like horned, sweet man, and dotish, she pestered her sister until she relented with the begrudgingly given definitions. Their adjectives fell short, however, mostly because of her father's overtly loving behavior towards her. While he would sometimes put off others, he would never be too busy to play on the floor or act as her horse, when she wanted to be a knight. From riding atop his shoulders to being his second mate on their fishing trips, they were always together. They were often described as two peas in a pod. So it had been with no small trepidation that she'd eased into the leather seat facing his desk. It was as her feet dangled, still too short to reach the floor, while noticing his maps and his instruments strewn across the mahogany desk, that he'd presented her with a brand new navy, canvas, and leather bag. She'd been momentarily elated. After a lifetime of hand-me-downs, she now had her very own never-used bag. As the euphoria from receiving the gift wore off, she'd mustered up the courage to ask about his opposition to her attending the new academy. Now, as she sat across from him, dressed in his Navy service coat, studiously perched behind his desk and framed by the mahogany bookshelves, staring at his prized tomes, she scoured the titles for an answer. Briefly, she considered suggesting they stuff as many of the books in her new bag as it could hold, while Miss Ella, as her father referred to her, opined about Miss Otis's regrets over a missed engagement on account of unrequited love. Amanda stood and pondered. Unrequited love. Useless sentiment. She inwardly gagged, while scowling at the record player perched on a corner shelf. She glanced up at his polished brass scope while making her way around his desk. Tubes that normally held his maps were strewn on the floor behind his chair, out of place. They were usually positioned between a copy of Divine Comedy and a set of Shakespeare's sonnets, along with works he'd collected by Roger Mays, Paul Keene Douglas, Merle Hodges, and Entour Pearl Springer on his many voyages to the Caribbean. Taking in the scene before her, the empty tubes, his ancient collection of maps spread across his desk, held in place by his decrepit old compass and an ashtray holding his cigar, she concluded, he's leaving on another voyage. And just like that, her good mood had fled. I thought they were hiring more men, as well as buying another ship, so that he wouldn't have to leave as much. She hated when he left. She looked down at the tubes on the floor, then up at the sextant and protractor on his desk, hoping for ideas. When that failed, she turned to her left, to a spot on the wall where a colorful framed tapestry depicting a stone citadel nestled atop a mountain during spring, with a much larger snow-covered mountain behind it, and looked for inspiration. It took up the length and breadth of the wall, as the port window on the opposite wall bathed it in sunlight that had filtered through the cigar smoke. One day he's going to tell me where this picture is from, she thought, staring at it. Amanda tried again. If I needed to be fast, it would have to be small and light. Heaving an exaggerated breath, she whirled on him. I get it, but Great-Grand didn't pack diamonds, and we're not on the run. She felt horrible because there hadn't been an argument about the tuition when Anna was enrolled. She couldn't help but wonder if he felt that she wasn't worth the cost. You're right. Nodding, he smiled at her, then just as quickly frowned. We've been lucky so far. Since the early 15th century, our monarchs have been, for the most part, just and fair. While our form of government hasn't changed, we're still an autocracy. But it's been stable, and our societal issues... He sighed, then shook his head. That's another story for another day. But history has shown us that things can change quickly, and life can go from being okay until it's not. Then what do you do, Amanda? He reached out to her, and she took his hand. Your mother is right. Nothing is more important to us than you and your sister. Nothing more precious. This academy. Releasing her hands, he stood and made his way to the tapestry on the wall. As he stared at it, Amanda considered the expression on his face as he said, Academy. His eyes narrowed, his nose scrunched, and he seemed to balk at the word. Is it the idea of me attending that he finds onerous, or the academy itself? She wondered. It is well equipped to provide you with the best opportunity to learn. But sometimes what's best isn't best for us. I would never shield or deny you an opportunity, he sighed. Then, facing her, his expression once again smoothed, he continued, Your education is utmost in my mind, but so is your safety. So, when you are in school, enjoy it all. Take advantage of every opportunity. But please don't lose that strong, vibrant, precocious, curious, tenacious, buoyant, outspoken young woman I know and love. I know you'll do your very best, but always consider the cost and never lose sight of who you are. Anna, please remember to find your sister at assembly after lunch, Amelia admonished, glancing at the girls in her rearview mirror. Her mother's deep tones had snapped Amanda back to the present. She hugged her laden canvas bag. I should have suggested we run with his decrepit compass, she thought, considering that cost. While she got to go to the academy and her mother got to keep her ice, her father was gone on another voyage. This has been part 2 of the prologue from Hope's Nocturne. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you would like to purchase this book, it will be available soon wherever books are sold. Or you can catch another episode next week on OPL Noir, the channel on YouTube.